The topic that we are going to present now is about the effect of genotype and phenotype patterns for the effect of blood purification therapies. To do that, we have to briefly speak about the rationale beyond the use of blood purification therapies, and we can explain how a similar population enrolled in a randomized clinical trial, the same modality, may give different results in different studies. A clinical subclinical phenotype should be recognized for septic patient, and we have to recognize that blood purification therapies may have a direct effect on immunomodulation of these patients. So, just briefly, through the use, as we know, sepsis is one of the most important causes of death in intensive care unit. According to the new definition of sepsis 3, it's a life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by an aberrant or dysregulated oxygenation. As we know, the severity of this syndrome is due to the pathogen involved, but mainly to host characteristics. And according to this theory, the use of blood purification therapies may help us to control this clinical syndrome through the removal of microbial components and/or inflammatory mediators produced by the host. So, through absorption, filtration, or dialysis with different membrane, we are now able to eliminate a vast amount of mediators, as for example, cytokines. As Professor Stolani told before, through different theory, we can unselectively eliminate the concentration, we can reduce the concentration of or expressed cytokines or anti-inflammatory cytokines. We can modulation, we might preserve the capability of monocyte to follow the concentration gradient of cytokines through the infected tissues. All these effects might have a positive role on the clinical phenotype of this patient with sepsis. However, we know that different patients might different response to these treatments, and the capability to respond to these blood purification therapies may be related to the effect, the amount of mediators which this host is able to produce. Mediators of the kind of the response to the receptor or the amount of illumination produced by our purification therapies. So, in other words, they depend from the capability of the patient to be able to be modulated in metabolic pathway through this treatment. So, the capability of the patient to be a responder to this treatment. So, we can understand why different populations respond in several randomized clinical trials. This is an example for our center in which septic patients with peritonitis and septic shock have been treated with high cutoff membrane with a very restricted enrollment. As we can see, every patient, if we cumulatively consider this population, we can observe a reduction in SOFA score just after 6 hours of treatment. But if we consider a subpopulation group, we can observe as some patients deeply and rapidly decrease the SOFA score. They really rapidly improve in hemodynamics or in oxygenation index, but other patients, so they are very strong responder, but other patients respond at all. In other words, we can also observe as, for example, peritonitis, a septic shock patient with peritonitis treated, for example, with cartridges based on polymyxin B, which in some study responds very early and very hemodynamic stability, or in more recent studies, they respond at all in terms of reduction of neuropilin reduction in SOFA score. How can it be possible that patients that are so similar, that are treated with a similar therapy, respond so differently? This is because the most important part of pathophysiology sepsis is driven by the host. The host, according to specific characteristics which are genetically determined, the age, the comorbidities, the environment in which the sepsis establish a specific phenotype of the sepsis. But what we can see according of this phenotyping is only a very little part, only the clinical visible part. For example, the hyperdynamic state, the shock, the reduction in glomerular filtration rate in sepsis, the capillary leak. There are a lot of things in type this patient, which is usually clinical unreasonable. So, for example, the capability of this patient for the diaperesis or the endothelial dysfunction of the lymphocyte alteration, which is not only the most important part of sepsis, but it's also the pathophysiological link which produces the clinical effect of sepsis. And obviously, these are and this is specific for each patient, for each septic patients. So how can we drive the indication of blood purification? It might be only restrictive or reductive to drive the blood purification therapy indication only through clinical variables, for example, septic shock or KD2 stage or infection or fluid overload. Some study tries to introduce the chemical phenotype in order to drive these blood purification therapies. The next step might be the consideration of the immunophenotype with this aim. As we know, the immunophenotype in sepsis is one of the most important causes of recovery or death for patient. As we know, during sepsis we produce a very important systemic inflammation which should be balanced by anti-inflammatory mediators and anti-inflammatory cells to reach an from the infection. If we have uncontrolled pro-inflammatory aggression, we early develop an organ failure and the patient early die for systemic inflammation. On the other hand, if the patient is not able to control the infection, he will die for opportunistic infection and he has a very high long-term death. Several evidence suggest that blood purification therapies might really affect these immune systems. They might have a direct effect on immunomodulation. For example, we can modify the number of immune cells during the treatment, and several studies suggest as the more activated monocyte, for example, might be locked in the cartilages based on polymyxin D, for example. Or the neutrophils might be catch for polypyrrolidone or polybenzene in reducing the effect of this activated cell in the circuits. On the other hand, we can modulate cell expression and function in several cells, for example, through the increase in the capability to present the antigen during, for example, in this case, a high volume hemofiltration, or the capability to increase the phagocytosis or the possibility to digest the microorganism during monocyte macrophage system. We can also affect the lymphocyte, which is usually not able to proliferate during sepsis, and as we know, the lack of capability of the lymphocyte system is one of the most important causes of death in sepsis for anergia, which is restored, for example, after, in this case, a high cutoff, the use of high cutoff membrane. This for both for spontaneous and for mediated anti-CD3 mediated proliferation. We can modify the surface mark and the proportion of cell during the treatment. So, for example, in this case, with high volume infiltration, this patient increased the level of HLA-BF, so they became again capable to present the antigen according to the reduction of interleukin-10 performed via the treatment. In our center, we are producing a study performed in septic patient with peritonitis with septic, very restricted enrollment, in which we want to see the correlation between clinical, biochemical, and immunophenotypical phenotype in terms of systemic inflammation or energy. So, for example, we try to evaluate the concordance of a systemic inflammation in clinical phenotype with the presence of pro-inflammatory mediators and high level of LHA-DR, or for example, high level of lymphocyte which express hyperinflammation, for example, Th1, Th17. On the other hand, Th, for example, 2 or T-reg lymphocytes are usually present in energetic state. So, high level of interleukin-6 or high level of interleukin-10 are have been observed for patients with severe condition with, for example, high level of SOFA score. As we have observed before in previous study, correlated with a correlation of interleukin-10 and expression of LHADR. So, for example, patient with very low interleukin-10 that has very high capability to present the antigen. We divide the population according to the expression of a LHADR in immunocompetent and immunocompetent. These are two examples. And what we observe. For example, this is an immunocompetent, this is the group of not immunocompetent patients, which has very low level of HLA-DR and very high level of the lymphocyte, which is energetic, with respect to the pro-inflammatory lymphocyte subpopulation. These patients are not able to efficiently respond to the infection and they die for energetic. If these patients are able to survive to this very early phase, they will die late if the subpopulation of energetic lymphocytes are higher than the lymphocytes which are able to eliminate the infection, as for example Th17 or Th1. This is what happens when an immunocompromised patient survives to sepsis. Very high level of T regulatory system falls down when the subpopulation lymphocyte, which should be able to eliminate the infection increase. And at the end, Th17, Th1 subpopulation lymphocytes are higher than the T regulatory and Th2 energetic lymphocyte. These patients are able to eliminate the infection and survive. We treat this patient with blood purification therapies. This is a group in which very high level of T regulatory lymphocytes, so these patients are deeply energetic. If compared to the Th1, Th17 subgroup, we start the treatment with, in this case, high cutoff membrane, and we observed a very high increase in HLA-DR expression. So these patients are again able to respond to the antigen. The T regulatory system falls down, and again the capability to respond to the infection is observed for this patient who will survive. On the other hand, for a hyperinflamed patient, we can observe a very high level of the LADR and high levels of population of inflammation with respect to the subpopulation of lymphocyte, which should maintain the balance between systemic inflammation. This is the classical patient in which systemic inflammation produces a very early organ dysfunction. The patients die for systemic inflammation. Again, if the patient survives, he might die late if the anergia occurs and the patient will die for opportunistic infection. This is the group of patients, hyperinflamed patients, which survive. Again, the capability of the patient to maintain a balance between hyperinflamed subpopulation and energetic population of lymphocytes gave him the possibility to respond to the infection but avoiding systemic inflammation and organ damage. What happens when we treat this particular patient with blood purification therapy? This is the group of hyperinflamed patients with very high level of subpopulation of hyperinflamed. So, for example, Th17. In this case, when we treat them with high cutoff membrane, we can observe the net reduction of subpopulation and again a balance between the pro-inflammatory and energetic subpopulation of lymphocytes, and the patient is able to respond to the infection, avoiding systemic inflammation. This particular study, I'm sorry, but I cannot present the results, not ready yet. We are studying them with a genetic point of view, and studying the specific genetic pattern for the regulatory system of the lymphocyte to observe patterns, genotypic patterns can be identified in specific patients. A role of genomic is well established in septic patients, but very few studies are present in septic patients treated with blood purification therapies. Just in a few studies, we have observed a difference in HLA alleles in genomic of this patient, which is correlated to the expression of HLA and the severity of sepsis, the severity of the API, and to the requirement of renal replacement. So when we indicate a blood purification therapy, we might recognize the patients who might benefit mostly from these treatments, not only from a clinical phenotype, but also from a biochemical phenotype and maybe immunophenotype. The role of genotype might be evaluated. As a conclusion, blood purification therapies might have a role of septic patient, a significant effect on survival has not been uniquely demonstrated in literature until now. A wide difference regarding the effect of blood purification therapies has been observed across studies involving patients cumulatively defined as septic, so encompassing all clinical and subclinical picture potentially observed within sepsis. In order to personalize the treatment for each specific subpopulation of septic patient, and to avoid jeopardizing results deriving from randomized clinical trial on blood purification therapies, a more accurate analysis of phenotype is nowadays necessary. The analysis of immunophenotype of septic patients is technically and economically feasible in routine practice that might help to identify patients who most benefit from blood purification therapies. Thank you for your kind attention.